order for the day. We already have a quorum this time, so yay!
Good work, everyone.
All right, so first up will be approval of our agenda. It's on here, but somewhat strange. I do want to mention, last month we discussed the idea of bringing back the business items as motions, just so we can formally do something on them related to the policy plan and handbook and public comments. So because we have quorum now and we didn't last month, but staff have suggested that I could put that in my reports at the end, so it's not actually necessarily an agenda change, but just be aware that I'm proposing a business action in reports and whatever that means to you. Any other changes we need to agenda? I guess that would be an old business, which we don't normally have. Okay, so then we can call our agenda good as is with that note and move to approval of minutes from both December and January. We'll take a motion from anyone who is present at those meetings.
Motion.
We have a motion from David. We have a second for that.
I'll second.
Second from Chris. Chris was at January, but not December. Is that, so do we have to split that if we don't have somebody? Okay. So we'll call that our motion then for January. Any adjustments to those minutes then for January? All in favor as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so January's approved then, so we can also call a motion from David. We have a second from someone who was at the December.
I can second.
Second from Monica. Any changes needed to December minutes? All in favor of approving those as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay? Okay, minutes for both of those are approved then. Thank you. That brings us to public invitation for any interested persons to address the commission on items that weren't on our agenda. Do we have anyone registered this month?
No, we don't.
Okay. A reminder, if anyone wants to speak at one of our meetings, email staff at the address on our agendas and we'll get you on the list. So then go to our two business items. First one up is for Big Marine Park Reserve. We have a Park Acquisition Opportunity Fund grant opportunity here for Washington County. Go ahead, Jessica.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Jessica Lee. I'm a planner in Parks. The first business item tonight is the Park Acquisition Opportunity Fund for the Marine Park Reserve, the Burin property in Washington County. Big Marine Park Reserve is in the northern part of Washington County and features high-quality natural resources, including the St. Croix Valley, uplands, and wetlands wildlife habitat. The park is also known for its fishing and swimming opportunities. The map on the right shows the entire park boundary, which is about 1,800 acres. The red parcels are owned by the county and open to the public. The green parcels are owned by the county but not yet open to the public. The subject property is the parcel shaded in blue next to the vets camp, which is excluded from the park boundary. The image on the left shows a close-up of the Burin property. The property contains agricultural fields that will be converted to natural resources, along with some hardwoods and over 12 acres of wetlands and ponds. This property was appraised at $1,715,000 and the seller has agreed to that amount. So the total acquisition cost is $1,734,243, which makes the grant amount $1,300,682, and of course Washington County will provide a 25% match. Our rationale for recommendation is that this project is consistent with the 2040 Regional Parks Policy Plan, the Parks and Trails Legacy Fund, and the Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund. We do have a mix of funding for this one. The Big Marine Park Reserve Long Range Plan, and Washington County is within its $1.7 million per fiscal year limit for both the PTLF and ENRTF Park Acquisition Opportunity Funds. So our recommendation is that the Metropolitan Council approve a grant of up to $1,300,682 from the Park Acquisition Opportunity Fund to Washington County to acquire an 80-acre parcel located in the southeast quadrant of 180th Street and Manning Trail in Marina, St. Croix, Minnesota, for the Big Marine Park Reserve, and authorize the Community Development Director to execute the grant agreement and restricted covenant on behalf of the Council. And with that, I'm happy to take questions, and also Sharon Price from Washington County is here.
On the funding, I thought they had maxed out one of the funds for the phase one acquisition of the ranch on the south. Was that not true, or is that?
Thank you, Chair, that was last fiscal year.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yep.
Anything else?
Nope.
David?
Okay, so the veterans camp, I'm assuming that, so the long range Washington, or Big Marine Park Reserve long range plan. It looks like that's the one, I guess, bayfront property that's maybe in the I guess in the way of having that being contiguous on there. Is that something that's like a future kind of negotiation, or how does that, or is this that's just a long-term thing that's never gonna
I
be?
can speak to part of
Yeah,
that.
go ahead.
It's at least not on the foreseeable future. It had at one time been drawn into the master plan, thinking that they might not use that property long-term. However, that came back to us later saying they kind of changed their long-term plans for that and are expecting to want to use that for that purpose now. So it was pulled out of park boundary a few years back for that purpose. So it could always be drawn back in if that changes, but what we've been told semi-recently is that the long-range plan is for that to continue operating. I don't remember if that came from the legislature or a state Department of Veterans Affairs, one of those two.
Yes. It has a lot of political support.
Yeah, so it is still very much an active thing.
I can make a motion to accept.
Okay, so we have a motion for the proposed action from the staff report from Monica. Do we have a second for that? Second from David? Is there any other discussion on that? All right, hearing none, all in favor, oh, no, I have to read it, sorry. That motion is that the Metropolitan Council approve a grant of up to $1,300,682 from the Park Acquisition Opportunity Fund to Washington County to acquire an 80-acre parcel located in the southeast quadrant of 180th Street and Manning Trail in Marine on St. Croix, Minnesota for Big Marine Park Reserve, and authorize the Executive Director of Community Development to execute the grant agreement and restrictive covenant on behalf of the council. Now, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? That motion carries, thank you. Then we'll go on to another Park Acquisition Opportunity Fund grant for Blakely Bluffs Park Reserve for Scott County, and again, Jessica.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. This is a park acquisition opportunity fund for Blakely Bluffs Park Reserve, the Leonard property in Scott County. Blakely Bluffs Park Reserve is a future park reserve located in the southwest corner of Scott County along the Minnesota River Bluffs. This planned park reserve features large areas of forest, stunning viewsheds, dramatic topographic changes, and high-quality habitat. The map on the right shows the park boundary, which is approximately 2,400 acres. The county-owned parcels are shaded in blue. The green parcels are all in holdings. The county expects the full acquisition of the park reserve to span several decades, but once they own enough contiguous land, they will open it to the public. The Leonard property is shaded in orange. The left image shows a close-up of this parcel. This 85-acre parcel contains 40 acres of forest and 45 acres of tillable land and altered wetlands that will be restored for natural resources. This property was appraised at $1,040,000 and the seller agreed to that amount. So the total acquisition cost is $1,076,033. The grant amount would be $807,025 and Scott County will provide the 25% match. Our rationale for recommendation is that this acquisition is consistent with the 2040 Regional Parks Policy Plan, the Parks and Trails Legacy Fund, the Blakely Bluffs Park Reserve Long Range Plan, and Scott County is within its $1.7 million per fiscal year limit for the PTLF Park Acquisition Opportunity Fund. So our recommendation is that the Metropolitan Council approve a grant of up to $807,025 from the Park Acquisition Opportunity Fund to Scott County to acquire an 85-acre parcel located at 17-130 Salisbury Hill Road in Belle Plaine, Minnesota for the Blakely Bluffs Park Reserve, and authorize the Community Development Director to execute the grant agreement and restricted covenant on behalf of the council. And thank you, I'm happy to take questions, and also Alyssa from Scott County is here.
Okay, questions, commissioners?
I guess it's hard when you ask me question buying land to get a park. Yeah, this sounds like a great future to me, so.
Excellent.
As long as we have the money.
Well, so that could be the other question is our typical, if we approve this and the other one, roughly what would our balances in those funds be then?
They would be, Chair Commissioners, I have that looming. We will have 7.2 million left in legacy, 4.4 million left in ERTF, for a total of 11.6.
Okay,
And that's for the whole fiscal year.
Yes, so that's this fiscal year and some past fiscal years.
yeah, so some of these are expiring things if you don't use them, although we're not, I don't think, on the brink of any of those at the moment.
We do have a couple large projects in the work that are exciting.
Yeah. I know there's a few things coming, but there was, in the past, we've occasionally had to ask for extensions on the Environment and Natural Resources Fund. But at the moment, we have several acquisitions that are able to use that, so it's not as much of a problem. Anything else? Yes, Anthony?
Is this a some type of, is it a shared project with Three Rivers Park District? And how is that structured? Like, is it because it's kind of in a transitional area between the existing things that Three Rivers has, or?
Right, because we heard there's some new stuff with that last month or the month before. What's that?
Sorry, go on.
We're just wondering how it fits into the new agreements, I guess.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner. So you're wondering how Three Rivers is in partnership with Scott County? So we partner with with Three Rivers to operate our parks, but this acquisition is entirely Scott County.
What was your name for the record?
Oh, Alyssa Olson.
Because I know that there's some things that Three Rivers owns in other counties, and then other things that they operate but don't own. This is something that you would own the land.
Correct.
That's okay. That's clear.
Thank you.
Anything else or motions? Guys are quiet today.
You can make a motion.
Monica is moving the proposed action from the staff report, I believe. Second for that from David. That motion then is that the Metropolitan Council approve a grant of up to $807,025 from the Park Acquisition Opportunity Fund to Scott County to acquire an 85-acre parcel located at 17130 Salisbury Hill Road in Belle Plaine for the Blakely Bluffs Park Reserve, and authorize the Executive Director of Community Development to execute the grant agreement and restrictive covenant on behalf of the council. Is there any discussion on that? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of that motion as presented, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? That motion carries. Thank you. Easy.
Moving right through.
So that will bring us on to information items already. The Imagine 2050 Art and Policy Update. Ellie and Erica, go ahead.
Coffee. Good afternoon, Chair Commissioners. My name is Ellie Hohulen. I'm the Cultural Policy Fellow here at the Council. And I'm Erica Herman, an Associate Planner in the Parks Department. And we make up the Art and Policy team here at the council. It's just a newer part of within the Parks Department, but working throughout CD. To start, I know that there's been mentions of this project throughout some of the past presentations on Imagine 2050, but we wanted to bring this to you all today to go into a little bit more detail, invite you to some things coming up, which we're hinting at a little bit with some festive decor we have on today. Typically, I know people aren't often presenting in silly ties and hats, but we thought
Nah, you
we'd.
two look great.
Thank you.
Clearly they should.
Trying to bring a little fun in as a preview to what we have coming up as a part of this project. So I'll dive on in.
Great. And just to kind of bring you back to the genesis of the project, so to truly imagine 2050, we thought we had an opportunity to bring in the arts and artists to synthesize and amplify the regional development guide's vision, values, goals, and policy areas. We also knew that this sort of, once every 10 years moment was a chance to introduce folks to the Met Council's work more generally. And our hope was, with our art-based work, was to make policy playful and fun with creative practices and artistic expression, and to break down the complex issues. But the overall goal was to experiment with ideas about how we can meet the public in new ways and in unexpected places.
So kind of the scope of this art and policy project is first regional art exhibition, which consisted of 4 artists creating illustrations that were then wrapped on buses, trains, used on postcards, such as what we have here, and there's some for you all to grab on your way out, as well as some buttons. But these works of art that were created in tandem with policy area representatives. So one for parks, housing and land use, transportation, and water. And Erica will go into more detail on those. Our second phase was an artist-led engagement, working with 9 artists to do pop-up engagement with a variety of artistic mediums, so kind of going beyond the visual. And then our third phase, working with different games, a digital tool for submitting feedback, and various interactives to kind of bring Imagine 2050 into a new and more accessible lens for folks. And then our fourth phase, which is kind of what we're moving into now, community conversation. So a multi-part series focused on some of the themes and the goals of the Regional Development Guide.
Great. And as Ellie mentioned, the first part of our project, the first piece of it was our mobile gallery. And so we commissioned 4 Minnesota artists, each to do a fully wrapped bus and light rail train. Actually, we had 12 buses and 2 trains in all. And we teamed those artists with policy writers from that particular policy area. So we had water, parks, transportation, and housing and land use. You can see that in the lower right hand, that's artist Cowley Tao, who designed the water bus, which we fittingly premiered at the Aquatennial Torchlight Parade. On the left is the parks bus, which we also brought out to some events, including the Monarch Festival. In the end, the reach of the work was pretty impressive. Our mobile gallery traveled 63,000 miles, about 2.5 times around the Earth, and it generated 37 million impressions. If we take a peek at the other ones. So these are our last 2 buses. So we have on the left is our housing land use bus, and that was created by Filippo Duali. And on the right is the transportation bus by Zena Goldman. Importantly, the buses, you can just barely see it, but they have an invitation for folks to share their dreams for our region along with the QR code. And those the QR code on the buses along with the postcards generated about 300 public comments of the 2,000 total public comments that the council received for the Imagine 2050 project.
So for our next phase, our community engaged artists, we wanted to kind of paint a picture with some great photos from across this summer, fall, and into the winter of how community engagement, working with these artists looked, quite a variety of events, things from the Chromosome Mural Festival, working with an artist to do an interactive mural, the Monarch Festival, as Erica mentioned, a upcoming installation in our HRA area over here on site at the council. So each of these engagements looked pretty different from what is typical for Imagine 2050. And we let the artists, with directive from policy area representatives, kind of create their own vision of what engagement might look like. And because of that, we had a really variety of things from a sound garden to flags to, painting tile murals together, so quite a variety, and we're going to go into detail on a few of those in these next few slides.
So this slide represents an event that we held that was kind of a culmination event in late September. So it was right before the public comment period closed. And we worked with Dakota County Parks and brought really kind of almost all of our visual artists and their buses, and a bunch of our community engagement artists for a half-day event where we had, you could experience a sound garden, you could paint a tile for the mural, and many people created flags that represented their most important policy goals. We also had food trucks and free s'mores, and about, I think, over 100 folks came to that event. So it was a beautiful fall day and just a great way to kind of bring everything together.
So in addition to the Lebanon Hills event, we had 30 plus events that the artists were either at or that we were hosting to have these engagements kind of pop up at. And so one of these examples was the flag making that we wanted to go a little bit more into detail on. This one's park specific, so very relevant to us. But the flags are actually hung now in the chambers, so if you pop your head in there on your way out or next time you're here, take a look at those. They're on the back wall. So 232 flags were made throughout this process, some in Anoka County, some in Dakota, and then some in Minneapolis. And participants were really involved in a kind of deep engagement with this. So they had a list of the 5 objectives for the parks policy plan, and folks then had to rank what was most important to them out of that. And so they did that with symbols that were on the flags, and they got to create their own flag, learn about what was in the policy plan, and then share what was most important to them. So through that process, we have a very interesting data set that kind of the top 2 things that stuck out to folks were having a healthy and safe system and an equitable and inclusive one. Those are the symbols that showed up most frequently in the flags.
We thought that youth engagement was particularly important for Imagine 2050, and we worked with Corinne Wendell, and she did 6 events in almost all of our 7 counties that were youth-based, including a big project that she did at the opening of the Girlhood exhibit at the Minnesota History Center, where we had about 300 Girl Scouts come together and do these basic city plans and sort of envision what they wanted their city to look like. She also did an event with Jordan Elementary School, where all the 2nd graders in that school did an urban planning, sort of design their future city project. So it was just a really, in the end, she reached over 900 kids and their caregivers. And it was just a very rich engagement, and and other kinds of things came out of it. Like at the Girl Scout event, there was a troop leader that thought, we could do a transit badge where we have the Girl Scouts plan and execute a trip on the bus, which they maybe hadn't traveled on the bus before. So there were nice little sort of add-on elements to it.
2 final artists within our community engagement cohort that we wanted to feature. On the left, Louise Fitch, who's a visual artist and graphic designer who created these wonderful posters highlighting each of our policy areas. The parks one says Parks for All, and each of those were placed at different transit stops throughout our system. And then they were also highlighted on the US Bank Stadium and Xcel Energy Center as animations. And so this way to kind of have these simple messages about the future of our system, but then have this visual medium a part of it too. And again, the QR code there that folks could comment if they would like. And then on the right, we have Melody Strong, who started doing engagement around housing with our housing team, and then connected all the pieces of that to make these beautiful murals that folks could individually paint tiles for. So you see on the bottom photo someone painting a tile that then came together to illustrate some examples of what the future of housing might look like in our region. And she did an engagement at the Monarch Festival, which had around 8,000 folks there. It was 144 tiles total, and they went fast. People were very excited to paint these and to engage with her and learn more about housing in our region.
And finally, the Art Shanty, which is the project that you can still come to. At the final weekend of the Art Shanties is this weekend, Saturday and Sunday from 10 to 4 on Lake Harriet. And you may remember that we did, the Parks Department did an art shanty back in 2020, right before the pandemic, that was focused on writing a love letter to your regional park, and about 4,000 folks wrote love letters during that art shanty. The shanties are an annual event that has become super popular. We estimate about 30,000 people will come over the 4 weeks. And it's an event where about 20 artists create temporary installations that sort of celebrate the ephemeral winter landscape. So for this year, our theme was Government Game Night, and we had some games in the exterior of our shanty, but the sort of centerpiece was a game that we created called Go Policy, which is a version of Go Fish that has our policy areas. So when you get a match, you lay it down and then you say sort of plain language policy goal that we have, that we've written out. And one of the, so we have 2 tables going. You can just see one table in that photo, but people sort of gather around, and sometimes we get up to 6 people around the table, strangers playing with each other. You have to learn each other's names in order to play the game. And so it's just a really interesting kind of way to come together and to say aloud those policy goals and be talking about it. And the other thing that was surprising for me was that I don't have kids, but there are a lot of families that come to the art shanties, and Go Fish is what this game is based on, and that's sort of like the first game that kids learn how to play, and the kids loved playing this game. They did not need to be told how to play it, and when they would be at a table, there was just something that was really striking about when you heard the policy goal read in a child's voice, and just the reality that this is the promise or the future that we're giving to them. So it was really, it just had a lot of surprises. And another one was that folks were really interested in, could we buy this game, and do you sell it? And other organizations like the Trust for Public Land and the Health Department said, it's such a unique learning tool. Could we get the template to customize it for our purposes? So it was just an interesting, we didn't know how it would work, and we're really surprised by how well it's been working. And then at the end of the game, you have the opportunity to write your own goal or hope for the region. And we probably got over 300 of them, but I just brought a couple. One person wrote walkable and mixed use neighborhoods, more art programming and funding, create a canoe route in the Twin Cities, moss parks for soft naps on sunny days. So it's just been a really whimsical and just a fun way. And you'll see that the shanty is clad in our bus wrap, so we were able to reuse those, and a lot of folks that commented that, oh yeah, I saw those buses. So it's fun to bring that back into play.
So we hope that you'll visit us this weekend at the shanty, but we know it's the final weekend, so we do have a couple other exciting events coming up. Our kind of culminating piece of this project in terms of the programmatic elements is a community conversation series. So we have two different events coming up, kind of combining government and artists in dialogue together to think about connection in new ways, think about how artists can help tackle some of the challenges in civic engagement and government, and kind of celebrate the adoption of Imagine 2050 and how that's launching into the future and the next 25 years. So 2 topic areas that we're highlighting. First, really climate and environment, and then second, World Water Day celebration. So March 20th, we'll be hosting an event at the Walker Art Center called Abundant Cities, and that will be focusing again on climate and environment with an evening panel as well as time, but we'll be playing our policy card game. And then March 22nd, also in the evening, celebrating World Water Day at Malcolm Yards, an event with the Freshwater Society, a couple other partners that work in the water space, as well as a projection artist, Con Rice, who we've been working with on a water-based projection that will light up the United Crushers grain silo space. So we're really excited for these events ahead and using it as a way to celebrate the launching of Imagine 2050 and the Regional Development Guide being adopted. So we have a few questions for discussion and are open to any other questions as well. We have been so thrilled to be doing this work at the council, both within the parks team and throughout all of CD. We've connected too with our Metro Transit colleagues who work in public art, and are just looking ahead to the future of what public art and community engaged art at the council looks like. We've seen so many times that this project has broken down the silos throughout the council, and we've been working, and even at the Art Shanty had folks on the ice from different divisions throughout the council, and being able to continue that. So figuring out kind of what this looks like. So some of the questions that we have are, how can this project support engagement in your communities, you know, specific to parks or beyond? How can we collaborate in other ways? What are your ideas to engage artists in the council's work, or specifically with the work of our park system? And do you see community engaged public art continuing at the council? So those are just some guiding questions, but we're open to answering anything or just hearing your thoughts. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have answers to any of their questions? Instead of asking you for questions, I'm asking for answers.
No pressure, huh?
Yeah.
I like it. I love it. I think when you use the word art in the cities or around people, it kind of grounds things, and because art is usually friendly, or it's an expression of what you are feeling. So most people will approach to that, and I think using art so they understand something that is very confusing like policy, it's a great idea. So I do see that art should stay and engage and be a great tool to engage people, for sure. I will really want to know how to engage new artists on it, because if you go to a high school or a middle school, I will say 80% of the students will tell you they're going to be artists one day. So how do you reach, for them? Not at this young age, but I'm sure a lot of them would like to be part of these events to kind of express themselves. I think that would be a great opportunity. And then you, on the side, tell them, well, have you heard about politics and parks and how it works? So it's a little friendly. So I think it's a great way to explore that. I do say we are missing a point here. If you're not selling that game and this game behind me, what are we doing? We are ready to be in the game.
Take it to the next level.
Yeah, no, the game industry is huge. There we go. We have an interest now. Yeah, thank you. And I do love your outfits. I like the hat and the tie. Very good.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yep.
Yeah, great point as well. I think so much of this project we've been really eager to engage with young people, and I think knowing their excitement around the arts has been cool to see, but I think it could even be brought to the next level. So.
I know it's not easy because when you try to get to the youth, you need to reach the parents, and parents are usually, I don't know, we're always busy, so it's harder to do it. But I think it's worth it at the end. It's like kind of like you say, if you hear a kid telling you these things, it really opens your eyes. I have taken my kids to the Minnesota History Society Museum, and they were totally scared about going to the History Society Museum. And then when they saw it, this is the funnest museum ever. It's great. So I think it really helps when you try to engage them at their level, which I think art is a perfect tool for it.
Thank you.
I did not see the buses, Emmett. I don't
In here?
know. I mean, I saw the pictures and everything, but they never run on my county apparently.
Do the buses always run the same route or do they get moved around?
Yeah, so they get moved around, and there's still a few of them out on the roads. They're through the end of this month, so you still
I'll keep
have
an eye.
a chance. Yeah, but they were switching up routes every day or most days. So
I need to ask my brother if he ever drove one. He's at Met Transit.
I saw the light train one, which is strange because I barely ever saw the light train, but that one I did notice. The other ones, I was like, I see buses all the time, and I couldn't find the pretty ones.
We need more.
Yes.
I'm really intrigued by this idea that people wanted to know if they could buy the card game. First off, I didn't realize that playing cards were something that you could do in short run printings. I don't know where you found somebody to do that, but that's very interesting, and it's giving me a whole bunch of other ideas. So like for instance, we've talked before about how do you get people aware of a new park they could go to or a new activity they could go to, and I'm thinking of like different games you could do where maybe our park agencies are sort of the suits or something. And there could be cards that have a pairing of a park and an activity you could do at the park, and you could do matching things like, okay, so here's 2 cards of the same park with different activities, or 2 cards with the same activity in different parks. And you could have a whole range of stuff like this where whether it's go fish or 500 or whatever, depending on how complicated you make the different sets of things. You could have things for different age groups for learning not only the policy, but what's in the park system, what kinds of things you can do in the park system, how it relates to other agencies. If selling card games is something the Met Council is capable of doing, this is intriguing because that has some appeal. You could have those in gift shops at different agencies' parks, as well as out in the public. People could have them at home, be like, well, we like hiking. Where can we go hiking? Well, we already know about these things. Well, here's a card of something I've never heard of.
Currently, we're not moving into production, but if anyone is interested in having a deck, we would get them in.
Well, I want one because I have kids that will play it. But I think it's a missed opportunity. I mean, we can have it in the country clubhouses, in the chalet after they ski. Yeah, I think it's great.
And like, I'm thinking I might be going home and brainstorming what are the different kinds of things you could put on cards, and then you can go find artists to make them pretty, and then figure out what to do with them. Because like, there's a few different angles of that. I mean, we could have Met Council board games too. I mean, like we've been asking for years, but like what sort of public engagement does it make sense to do from the council level? And coming up with a whole lot of, I don't know, our website could be better. And this is more exciting than that.
Have you ever seen those those decks that are like adventures in a state? And you kind of go through different cards, you can do them in groups or a couple or whatever. It would be really cool to do that with the regional parks. And maybe if you finish the entire deck, you go to every regional park, maybe there's a little something at the
Yeah, you
end
can
or
give them
something.
one of the pretty hats.
I mean,
I would also say too, I love, as a kid who grew up in the cities and did murals in parks, like mosaics, I still look at those and I have the fondest of memories. So I feel like there's something there with really grounding young people in going to these spaces where they've participated in making a mosaic. So maybe it's a part of, like an entry aspect to the regional park, and they will bring their families there to see those. And that's, then it will always be a part of them. So kind of, I don't know, I feel like there's something there just from my own personal experience, and it's wonderful to see that mosaic, and it was really beautiful, so.
you're talking about
keep
stuff
doing
that's like a
that.
relatively permanent fixture.
Yeah, why not? I mean, if we're putting in new signage and different things like that, it could be, the posts are maybe highly mosaicked, or it could be, a couple of benches that we're putting around, or, I think that There are definitely spaces where we're putting in permanent fixtures that are with concrete or cement, and there could be some opportunities to make something really beautiful there. And maybe something specific to that park about why it's special, via snowboarding or whatever, some type of activity, maybe birds or things that you'll see specifically in those areas. I don't know, could be kind of cool.
Yeah, I'm thinking like, imagine the, you see on all sorts of DNR literature, the biomes of Minnesota map that has the 4 different shapes. Like, walk into any sort of a visitor center, you could have that on the wall where each visitor has placed one tile of that or
Oh,
something.
that would be cool.
Yeah,
Anyway, I love the.
the being able to go back and say like, I
wanna
put
see
that
those
one
happen,
in.
not just temporary. I will say I did go to Lake Harriet and I couldn't even get in to play the game because there was like a line and people were taking their time. So we just played cornhole outside and then it got cold and I was like, we gotta
Keep it
move on, but it was very popular, so that was really cool to see there too.
I think you all are way overdoing it, but I'm just gonna, I never sat in a room full of people who said, no, not more cars, like, so, I mean, I don't know, I'm just, you know, everybody's a marketing expert. I'm just telling you guys, just don't put your money on playing cards, but.
Are you kidding me? That's the worst advice
it's-
ever.
it's
Always
like-
put your money on the cards.
Well, that's part of my question is, what is the economics of that, of like,
Yeah,
can you print them in small enough batches that we're not losing money on it and not making them
It's our specialty.
yeah.
like, what would it, what does it take to be cost effective? Are they $30 a pack or are they $5 a pack? I
It's
don't know.
not printing them, it's selling them. It's like every gift shop will tell you, they have if I would love for us to talk to our implementing agencies and go, you know that thing that you thought was really, you know what I mean, how they, you know, what is it that actually people do? So anyway, I just think it's funny, but I appreciate you all. I think on the artist side, so just in terms of things, one of the things I would say that I am interested in, as someone who does community engagement and is suspicious of it simultaneously, I think in terms of outcome, you know, I'm really interested in kind of the things around outcome because a lot of the places you go are places that people go who already love parks. Like the Monarch Festival is a great event and it is the worst place to get new information or talk to someone who's never been to a park, right? Say Lake Harriet, Lake Nokomis, like those communities, you know what I mean? They love parks. And so, you know, it's nobody new. And that was always the challenge with the data going back to Raintree, you know, that the data we were getting was in parks with people who go to parks, right? So it's not trustworthy information in terms of giving us, maybe trustworthy, it's not guiding information on how we engage people more deeply in parks, right? And so I think that the idea is really how do we use these things to inspire, like inspiration would be a better measure of success, to go to a park, right? To go more deeply into a park, right? I think those are because I think our regional park system, it again, we are bored, it is the best in the world, and that is without a doubt. And so when we're in a park already, we're talking to people who love parks often. So the thing that I ask is really how do we use these really clever and engaging strategies to inspire people who are not in the system to start to experience the system or expand what they think is a system. So if you live in Washington County, for example, you literally don't know that all those parks from, you know, Big Marine all the way down, and you're almost in Hastings, right, is a Washington County park. But Three Rivers is right over here, you know, or St. Paul or Ramsey County, and so the idea of how do we do that, I think those things are really, you know, kind of cool. And then I think, I do think that the art, and I am a fan of artists as collaborators, because what I think artists do is touch the emotional life of a community, you know, like versus the other stuff that skiers or bikers or those people do. And so I also think about how do we share the expertise from our art learning with other aspects of the work we do. Does that make sense too? Because I do think that it's really easy to be, you know, tied to the activities of a park. And then I think we miss the opportunity of really the emotional aspect of why the system is amazing. And that may be just a really cool targeted thing for us to help community understand is that you don't have to go to a park to do something. And that's one of the things that we're experiencing at Theodore Worth Park is people are, just shorthand, they're going, why don't black people go to Theodore Worth Park, right? And it's ultimately because every time you pull up, you think if you're not skiing, you don't belong there, right? If you're not golfing, you don't belong there. If you're not mountain biking, you pull up in a park and it looks so specific that you disqualify yourself. And I think that's something that, really happens all the time. And so I think about experiences that you all created and to do that, to get people to go, me too. Like that's part of our work, is to really get people to go, yeah, me too. Like I belong there too, instead of not me. And I just think people are so tired of that. So I think that the work of artists and how we do it, I think those are ways that we can do it. And I think it would be really cool for us to offer, not just to implementing agencies, but to organizations that are kind of committed to the activities to learn the skills of the art kind of engagement stuff to make their places better. And I think that is some type of, I won't call it but a toolkit. You know what I mean? Like even I think that the way that the work that you all did, like that in the form of a toolkit that could be handed out to implementing agencies and activity-based groups to then use the tools that artists use to engage people and create those emotional kind of connections would be really useful for the work that we all want to do around engagement. And I think our implementing agencies are really doing a lot of it, and they use the word deep and rich. Like those are all. No one says I did bad engagement. It's always rich, deep engagement, or
robust,
right? We have a lot of engagement adjectives. But I think that the way that you did it, like literally the way you planned it, what the strategy was, and how to do that would be as a toolkit would be useful for the entire system. And then we get some continuity in terms of the way engagement happens too.
No, we really appreciate all those comments. That's super helpful. I think one thing that it brings up for me that we're kind of working on as our next step is an impact report to look back on what we did and what might, we would have changed in the future, what kind of impact this had, but then also a part of that will be a toolkit that we can then give. So very, very timely response. But I think, getting into more of those pieces so that people can replicate elements of it, and especially that emotional piece. I love that. So I think we're eager to do that this spring and summer, and then be able to share a physical piece, and we'll be sure that gets to all of you as well. David.
I had a similar idea to Anthony's on the toolkit. The thought occurred to me that every community has its own artists, and I'm just wondering how those people can be tapped to, if there's like a kind of like I don't want to say parent-child, but like a kind of an association, and there's kind of a group of artists that have been involved in 2050, and maybe there's branches out to communities, engage those folks. Maybe the toolkit is kind of used for that purpose, and they explore ways to make it come alive in their own communities that way.
Yeah.
I'm convinced those people exist in every community that are willing to do that. The one in our local park, just on her own, does these wonderful creations on a trail that just stop people and like, oh, look at what's right there. It's all branches and whatever that she just puts it all together, and it's like, wow, somebody put some time into that. It's really cool.
Yes, Emmett.
Oh, I just wanted to respond to Tess, to your, you went and you had to wait a long time. We found that to be true, and so.
I wasn't trying to complain or like cause a fuss
Well,
at all.
This was the team's thought, like, let's break the decks in half, so there's fewer cards, so the games go more quickly, because what you're saying is exactly right, that people especially at the place, there's a table where you can sit down and they start warming up and they're having fun, but the way that they instructed the people playing the game was to make sure that, like, if you're asking for the red 3, you have to say, Tess, do you have any red 3s? So like people are getting to know one another, and I played about maybe 20 or 30 games and had a really good time. And like you left thinking that you met people and felt good. So it was pretty cool. So it needs refinement, yes. I don't think it's gonna be perfect ever, but it was,
No, we shouldn't
it
put
was an
everything in the cards.
engagement.
But the point that you're describing, and everybody's starting, we're coming to this, is that human connection is the ultimate measure of success.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter what we do, it's the highest measure of health.
Yeah.
Right, it's the highest measure of what we think about as, it is always the highest measure, and so that's kind of what I'm saying too, is like getting, how do we, like, even elevate that as a standard, right? It's never the skill or the thing, it's actually, a sense, it's a positive emotional connection to what happened, right? It is a sense that you connected to other people. And it's almost like that's what I mean, it's like a really interesting thing coming from Met Council, to say that, like, for activities we do, engagement we have, when we teach skills or progression of experiences, the highest measure of success is I feel I can connect to other humans and I had emotional positive connection. And I just think that's a really compelling standard for us as parks people and policy people, because nobody has a good positive emotional experience in policy.
Pointy-headed
Well, except Tony.
plan.
Tony, I think you get
To
me
create
jacked watching you
community.
get jacked about policy. I just want you
It's a happy place.
but no, that's kind of, I think that's like what artists always do, and they make life better.
And there are so many amazing artists here. I mean, I feel like
This community
this-
loves artists, right?
this is like
yeah.
just the beginning. You can do all the things that you're doing now over and over again, and it will still ring true every time.
And we just need money, right?
And so what Anthony's getting at is part of what I struggle with. Like, I come from an engineering background, I like numbers and spreadsheets and stuff. So this is way out of my wheelhouse. So my question becomes, how do we know how well we're doing? Like, we all kind of look at this like, this sounds great. How do we know, was it more or less great than the last thing we tried? Or should we do this again or do something different? So like, I'm curious about, like, in your impact report, you went out and talked to a bunch of people and a bunch of people had fun. How do we measure whether that's accomplishing particular goals for whatever we set out to do, in terms of, like, are we getting anything measurable, like more comments on our request for comments for the policy plan? Or are we getting people coming back to a park in a different way? Or if we ask someone 2 years from now, hey, do you even remember this thing you did? Do we get something? How do we know something that we can actually use to inform our policies from something that's based on, do humans feel good? Like, how does that work?
Yes, that's a really, really good question. I think it's something that we are trying to figure out as we look ahead to this impact report. I think some of it will be the numbers that we do have available, and not all of the things that we have available, are gonna speak exactly to that. Like, we have the number of impressions of the buses, which is great, but how many people saw it and didn't think anything of it? Many. There are some people who we've heard just from interacting with people that they're like, oh yeah, we know this. Like, we worked with a middle school group and showed them the postcards, and some of them said, oh yeah, we've seen these out in the world. And I don't think middle schoolers would have lied to us. So I believe that they really did and they enjoyed it. But figuring out how to take some of these responses and things that are more anecdotal and apply it to determining what the impact was. And again, all of this was really a pilot, and I think we're learning a lot, but we do want to make sure that the work that we're doing is having an impact and is moving us towards this connection, and this connection that artists can have. Being able to have people feel really excited about this game has been awesome, and a good way to think about what kind of our next steps might be, knowing that connection through the arts, connection through meeting other people, and doing something a little silly that's related to policy is still teaching you things. But again, yeah, figuring out what those actual numbers or responses or things that are more concrete is what kind of this spring and summer is going to look like, and then figuring out if there is a next step and how that changes from what we did this past time.
Yeah, and what gets really tricky is, I'm most interested in the long-term kind of stuff, and you can only measure what things are now. And what I really wanna know is, when we did something with a child today, how does that change their behavior as an adult 20 years from now? So some of that might also come to, can we find anyone who's an adult today that had anything remotely similar to this 20 years ago? And can they inform us on like what worked and what didn't? Like,
This, just
I just said that.
it's like, yeah, so some more of those kinds of anecdotes of like, what, if we go to the adults that we consider like park successes, what do they remember and what made them that way, and how can we do more of that with people that are kids now?
I'm free between 1:30 and 3 if you wanna have a little chat. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. How do we get a statistically valid sample set of Tess's?
Well, I really think that Anthony brought up a very valid point that like creating that community, right? This was something that my aunt heard about that was happening a block from our house. It wasn't in a park, but it was gonna be installed in some of the parks in South Minneapolis. And I went for an hour and then I ended up going the rest of the time for every session that they did and created my own art that I was able to take home and like have as my own little piece, and then also to be able to participate in these huge murals. And I still look at them and I have such positive memories from those experiences and feel more grounded and connected to my community than I did if I never would have had those. So I really think that there's something there to creating those opportunities within those communities, not necessarily in the parks that you're trying to get people to go to. But bringing that art to the parks so then they go because they have a connection. And maybe it then turns into a community thing that happens at the park, or who knows what ends up coming out from that. But I think there is a kit there to be made that would really be empowering and grounding in community, and then just creating these relationships with nature that are kind of the initial idea, but kind of like secondary or tertiary to the kind of the project or the creative expression that people are having. So definitely keep doing it, it's great.
I have one thing, and the idea is to engage artists in council work. I don't know how useful this might be, but like Anthony said, most people don't get super excited about policy documents. And I'm wondering if we can use art both to engage some new people and make some of our boring documents less boring. So in particular, what if every time an agency was doing development of a new long-range plan, they, as part of the community engagement, solicited like illustrations to include in that long-range plan to both, now you're reaching out to some new people to be involved in that process, and having the ultimate goal of maybe making it so those plans are something that normal people might read instead of just us. Is it, I don't know that a couple of illustrations in the margin changes a whole lot, but maybe? Make it a little more accessible of like, hey, this is a thing you can learn about what the plan for the park is, as opposed to just, this is the thing that we had to do to be able to eligible for money, right?
Well, Tony, one of the pieces, and I can't remember the artist, but actually the artist, because I've seen the bus stops, right? It actually always looked like an infographic to me, and I don't know if that was intentional, but that's one of the things that I do see people doing more and more of, is infographics and actually one of the qualities that you laid out was the ability to explain complex topics. I think it's, and so I think, from in using artists, the same thing, I think, and I do think that, like, as a policy is complex, but that's maybe is a thing that we do, and maybe that's led by what is really important related to, in terms of policy, related to outdoors or related to the regional park system that can be shared with community members. And all of us, I think the thing that happens is that each community has pieces that are personal to them, because even though they're regional parks, they feel like neighborhood parks, right? And so maybe there's something we do around that, because I just know that infographics work, right? They really do work.
I'm also thinking, like, if you actually want to go read long-range plans, they're often kind of a chore to find. They're squirreled away somewhere on somebody's website, but we don't usually put them front and center. Like, what can we do to make our policy kinds of documents something we all want to show off and then therefore do? So when you're learning, you go to a page for a particular park at a particular agency's thing, you'll get like the map of how it is now and the things about how. But what can we do to make them think then, oh, we should also showcase our plans because this is cool, and maybe artwork is part of it. Well, this is somewhat a tangent, but you mentioned someone asking about canoe routes. I know there's a bunch of paddling routes that are operated by other agencies, some by DNR, some by watershed districts. Do we actually show those in our policy plan and maps as units operated by somebody else? I don't know if we call them out.
Not really. Three Rivers has the Minnehaha Creek, which is a proposed park search area, I think. You might be talking about the Anoka County Rum River Complex. Just kidding, that's like, they have those 3 parks along the Rum River now that I think they are gonna.
No, I'm actually thinking more, so like.
Water trails.
There's the state water trails that are administered by the DNR as a concept, but frequently the accesses to those rivers, many of them are in regional parks.
Yeah.
There's also the Rice Creek is operated as a paddling route by the watershed district, and it passes through regional parks in Anoka and Ramsey County, and they have frontage from parks onto it. So all the access is in regional parks, but the actual information about the trail is on the watershed district website. I think those 2 park agencies do at least have links to it now. 10 years ago they didn't, but it's still kind of confusing to a new person to realize that that's a whole separate thing. But I don't think they're really called out in council documents. Because
Well, the
that's a
DNR
whole-
definitely has a water trail system.
Yeah.
It's like 35, 45 water
Yeah,
trails,
but like,
organized.
our map shows where state parks are
Yeah.
and says, here's some things operated by DNR, but we don't mention the state water trails.
Okay, yeah, cause I was gonna say we definitely have those. I do
Yeah.
think that I think it's Anoka County, I mean, there's a couple, I think that, I remember when that came up, and one of the things that we discovered in terms of connecting people outdoors is that water was actually better than biking. Like that the response to a first canoe experience was higher than a first biking experience.
Yeah.
Or first, and it's just, which I didn't see coming. But it makes sense once you, especially if you get used to being with people on water versus other stuff. But that's where I was really excited about Anoka County doing that, creating that, like, where you progressive skills experience, you kind of learn, you can try it. But I do, I don't know, I do know the state system is laid out. They call them water trails. It's very specific. There's a map of them. You can look up water trails and it tells you where to go and how to do it.
Yeah, so like we had discussions about a unit type for this thing when Three Rivers and Anoka County were asking about doing their own, but we have not done a good job of using our system to communicate the access to the things that already exist. Which
I think that is so complicated, like really complicated. Like I understand that now because I'm here. But if you have told me 10 years ago DNR, I would say, okay, no resuscitation. Got it. So I will never go to the DNR website to find anything. That's just, that's part of the government. I need to do correct. So you go to Google and say, tell me things to do around the Twin Cities. So if we can get, the regional parks in TripAdvisor in the first 10 things to do, like I know some of the Three Rivers are there, then people will go because it's easier to find. It's just, I mean, the Metropolitan Council, only when Sandy is so nice to send the link, I will find the, the agenda and everything. Other than that, it's like, it's just too much. And you want me to find things to do here? It's like, it doesn't even look like he was gonna show me something to do. So, I don't know.
And water is another one of those things that very confusingly crosses jurisdictional boundaries.
Yeah.
So like you could totally put your canoe in off of land operated by Anoka County into water operated by the watershed district and then take out onto land operated by Ramsey County or the DNR or whatever.
But see, you really
And
have
figuring out how to
canoe.
plan that trip for the day?
I mean, if I gonna go, I'll be, okay, I need to find a river, so I will go to the Mississippi River, because I know there's a river park, I know is right there, and they have some kayaks, so I
And
can
now you have
take
the
this
National
one,
Park Service involved.
and then, yeah, so I'm totally out of it. But if you want me to bring a canoe somewhere else, I will be, well, I don't know if it's private property, I don't know if I can go there, and then to see the landing places, like, is it working? It looks kind of muddy, I don't know if it'll go, and then it's like, please wash out your stuff, it's like, it's just so much that it really is scary that you're breaking so many rules that you're like, well,
Yeah.
let's just go to the community pool, that's easier.
Just tell them no time.
Right?
Right. Yeah, so this is very much a tangent from the art thing, but in
Tony
terms
said
of-
it's okay for me to be here.
But no,
In terms of community, communications as a council.
Oh my gosh, can you, Tony?
what we can do then is make art can be virtual art, so you can have an art website that gets everything friendly here, so families, like my family will be, I mean, now I know, but it took me sitting down in a commission to listen to and read papers like this, so I don't know, it's very complicated.
Yeah, the problem with searching for things is that you're at the mercy of marketing and marketing dollars specifically. It's like, the way to combat that is to have better contained content that solves that kind of activity problem specifically, because I do see that, like, and then you would have to be able to, for instance, if we have, there's that regional map that has all the bike trails. Well, there could be a regional map or a digital map of possible canoeing activities, and you select one based on the length of canoeing that you want to do, or the type of end destination you want to get to or whatever. But that's going to take some work for somebody to get to. It's going to take some work for somebody to get it on a web page, and then to be able to get that into a place where you're not going to search it by Google, but that it's well known enough that you don't have to go to Google to.
So if we can drag this back to our topic slightly, I'm wondering if, so we have an ongoing project to do some better GIS data within the council.
Yeah.
And we're talking about updating some activities, lists in various places and things like that. Maybe we should get some artists involved doing some public engagement in like, okay, if you were going to go to a government website and get some information, what would be ways of presenting that are accessible? Not only in just getting the right data on a page, but also making it look good and in a way where you understand what you're looking at. It's like, yeah, I can find websites that have layers I can toggle on and off in ArcGIS, but that's not how a normal person works. So get some, cool art about, like, select your activity by, the nifty icon of a canoe or a kayak or whatever that's, drawn instead of just like in a table legend or something. Maybe that's a way that we can make that a more pleasant experience. Working within our own council resources of, besides just, think bigger than map, like maybe it's still a map or instructions on where to go, but maybe in a more artsy way that connects with what people's thought processes look like.
I love it. I think we have to do better wayfinding. I hear that loud and clear. Make it easier, and that's a longer conversation, and we can bring this topic back.
Yeah, well, and it's both like wayfinding and activity finding and cross-jurisdictional, ignore the bureaucracy, whatever.
And make all that fun with artists.
Well, maybe you could highlight nonprofits or projects that are already doing a lot of those things are already integrated into community. Maybe if you connect them with having free services or access to kayaks and canoes and different things like that for drop-off points, then they're already kind of doing that work a little bit, and then it's connecting people to a new group, a new community. You wanna do this, you can go here, and they'll take you on the kayak or the canoe trip. Maybe you do some extra activities within that, and then it kind of creates that, so it's doing a little bit
It
of
kind of ties in a
everything.
little bit, we also talked about some like public-private partnership stuff. I think this was in the context of a particular long-range plan for Washington County. Of like, if you're out on a bike ride on all of these regional trails, knowing where can you stop at a bike shop if you need to get a flat repaired or something, that kind of stuff. So not only like nonprofits that might be able to take you out on an activity, but also just if you're doing that activity, what stuff in the area do you care about and how can we show that? Whatever that looks like.
Well, I will also say, kind of like Anthony kind of pointed out, is we can also advertise the parks just for being parks. I mean,
Snowboarding.
you can enjoy going to a park with doing nothing on it, just walk around and, you know, see, but I don't know, it's just, I think we're forgetting that part. And it's important, like, I don't need a reason to go to a park, just I wanna go outside.
On your little icons of activity selection, you need the laying against a tree reading a book.
Yeah, kind of like that. Yeah, something like, you know, I would say, I know it's hard, but we could give all this information in illustration to kindergarteners and they will spread the word. And we know they are in the schools all the time, so we have them there. We know where they are. We just have, you know, to reach the school board. So good luck with that then.
Anything else on these?
I'm just worried that now you have more questions than answers for your questions. Sorry.
Good place to be.
Always come back to us with more. Is there anything else you wanted from us today?
No, this is excellent, yeah, thank you so much for your time, yeah,
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
thank you.
That's very cool. All right, then we'll go on to our other thing for the day here, which is the Regional Parks and Trail System 2024 Fishing Piers Grant Program Selection. I understand we have some gizmos and it'll be fun. Tell us about what we're
Thanks,
doing.
Anthony, you're gonna miss the excitement.
Alright, I have a brief recap of how we got to here. I'll do that first. So you probably all remember this, but just in case. The Minnesota legislature appropriated $500,000 for new fishing piers on lakes in the regional park system. These funds have a very short timeline, so we decided to have a non-competitive grant process. The staff worked with agencies to determine a good amount for those grants, and we decided 4 projects of $125,000 each would be the best use. The council approved the notice of funding availability back in October, and after that we accepted applications and web grants. And we received 6 applications. So we have Carver County for Lake Laconia Regional Park, City of St. Paul for Crosby Farm Regional Park, Dakota County for Lake Billsby, Ramsey County for Van Ness Snail Lakes, Three Rivers Park District for French, and Washington County for Cottage Grove Ravine. And the notice of funding availability did approve the lottery selection process, which we're about to do, and it also approved the awarding the grants based on the results, so we don't have to come back again for the grant awards, but we can send them out right away. And our rules tonight are each agency can only get 1, up to 4, and so we will just keep spinning it until we hit 4 agencies.
All right.
I wanted to add just a couple things.
Mhm.
Number one, our very own Zoe Mock, our trails planner, designed all the beautiful fish of Minnesota that are on. She's an artist. Number 2, what was number 2? Oh, Nathan's here to take pictures, so I hope nobody has any concerns about that. No big deal, but it's awesome, thank you, because we wanted to share some of this. Councilmember Vento, who really wanted to be here, wanted to make this a huge, like, invite the entire legislature here to come and watch. I asked our legislative office if that was okay to at least invite the person who authored the bill. And they're like, they don't want to be around for people who don't win. So we'll take that burden on tonight and make this even better. I hope this happens again. I think that one of the things that agencies and you have said is fishing piers are a great activity to support, so.
Okay, so yeah, if we land on a Go Fish or a spot from an agency that already won, then we just spin again.
We'll take the cards out as we
Yeah.
select winners.
Yeah,
You get to spin, Tony.
I guess.
There's a
guess
lot of
this is my
prestige that goes around being the chair of it.
It's like, mark up your table with rubber.
No big deal.
All right, so I guess here it goes for the first one. And it's Go Fish. All right.
Who is it?
Ramsey County. Let's see if I can,
Do you need help?
maybe, I can sort of, there we go. Takes a bit to grab them.
Ramsey
All
County.
right, so there's the first one.
Okay, I was hoping the people who came would get theirs.
Do not need to be present to win. Oh, it's the same spot.
Ramsey County won again.
Okay, Washington County. All
Right.
right. Go Fish.
So excited. Ramsey County.
Is this weighted? I don't think so. There we go. Who's this? Carver County.
Hey-o.
All right. One more. Oh, blank.
Does seem to be weighted.
Well, now it's weighted towards the.
Yeah.
I suppose
You
the.
should have left them in.
I mean, they're just paper, guys, so. They don't weigh that much. Oh, come on.
Oh.
Almost got two.
Jonathan knows one away. This is it.
Oh!
I think that's it.
There we go. Who is this? St. Paul. All right, so we got ones for Vadnais Snail Lakes, Cottage Grove Ravine, Lake Waconia, and Crosby Farm. Cool.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for playing.
Thanks,
I'm
guys.
sorry for the agencies that didn't win, but that was awesome.
That was fun.
Thanks.
All right, that'll move us on then to our reports section. And as I mentioned, we're gonna do actually a couple of motions in this. So I can go grab those. So these are things that were our business items in January, and we just weren't able to actually do a motion because we didn't have quorum. So I'm going to move them now to be able to record whether you actually vote for them. We still have quorum, even though Anthony had to leave. So, my first thing is I'm going to move business item 2025-3JT, which is that the Metropolitan Council accept the public comment report on the 2050 Regional Parks and Trails Policy Plan and adopt the 2050 Regional Parks and Trails Policy Plan chapter. I will still look for a second on that. Second from David. I'm not going to do like presentations or anything, but any discussion on that? I think we got our discussion in last month, so. Okay, hearing none, all in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? So that motion carries. And then our second one was item 2025-6, which has 4 parts. This is that the Metropolitan Council, 1, establish the Regional Parks and Trails Planning Handbook as the administrative guide for Regional Parks and Trails long-range planning requirements. 2, adopt the attached Regional Parks and Trails Planning Handbook, attached on things last month. 3, authorize council staff to make administrative changes to the handbook over time, including additions and updates to related tools and resources. And 4, direct council staff to bring any updates that directly impact or necessitate implementing agency action related to sections 3, 5, 6, and 7 of the planning handbook to the council for approval, aligning with any updates to the regional park and trails policy plan. Look for a second on that as well.
I second.
Chris raised his hand first. And any discussion on that?
Is there anything different on those items that, you know, that you mentioned from the 2024, or is pretty much the same? You know, like review it every 3 times or? It's the same, okay.
It's the same as what we looked at last month. This is something that didn't exist prior to this
Okay,
year, so.
the handbook, okay, got it, yeah.
That handbook is a totally new item.
Yes, perfect.
Anything else? All in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? So that carries as well. So that has already gone to CDC, but has not yet gone to the full council. So now when it goes to full council, they'll be able to say that we actually have support from MPOS.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. My other item for the day is to ask about the July meeting. The first Thursday of the month would fall on July 3rd, so day right before a holiday. We are legally allowed to meet on that day, unlike last year. However, our secretary would be away. So there are a couple of possibilities. We could still meet on that day and work from the recording and stuff later. Staff has also suggested we could meet on the Tuesday, the 1st of July instead, or open to other possibilities if need be. Wondering if there's feedback from commissioners about that.
I can do the first.
I can as well.
I'm good with either one. First is fine too.
Okay. I think everybody present here would be fine with the first if that's what staff would like to do. You could double check with anybody not present here, but I think tentatively that sounds like probably the plan.
Sandy, can you just push it out to the whole commission and
Sure.
with the idea that it worked for all the commissioners that were present? So,
Sure, I mean, this would be a quorum, but yeah,
thank you.
we can do that.
Okay. Excellent. So I'll mark my calendar as probably that, but Sandy will ask everybody to check. We did also get a message during our meeting from Amanda sending her regrets. She's tied up at the Capitol. So
In a house committee, the house is meeting.
they are. If they just held off another day, she could have been. So that's all I have. Any other commission reports? Okay, and Sue's not here. Anything from staff?
Just 3 really quick things. I just wanted to report that on January 23rd, we had MPOSC interviews for the commission in districts E, F, G, and H. The interviews went great. We were hoping to wrap it up by the 12th of February, but legislative consultation is taking a little bit longer. No big deal, but we're almost there. So we're gonna be bringing it the 26th. Lisa, is that right? 26th of February to the full council. So stay tuned, but that's making its way forward.
So we should have approvals finalized before our next meeting start.
Yes, definitely.
Cool.
I was gonna just mention what Tony already did around the legislature. Now they are, as they say, constitutionally organized, so that's really exciting, that the House will be in session as well as the Senate, which has been in session, and that will get moving in earnest. And stay tuned, we have 3 budget recommendations in the governor's bill, one for the Parks and Trails Legacy Fund, one for operations and maintenance funding, and one for bonding. I don't have the exact amounts now, but it's good to be there, to have something in, and we'll work on seeing that through for the session. Finally, just a reminder that the Art Shanty project will be on Lake Harriet one more weekend, Saturday and Sunday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. It's really fun. Go check it out if you want. Play some cards. Hopefully the crowds, I think that it's gonna be a little colder on Sunday, it might be a little snowy on Saturday, but that's what it's all about, so. That's all I got.
All right. With that, I think we can adjourn. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.